I thought I'd landed my dream job at Helping Hands Foundation when they hired me as their new finance coordinator 6 months ago. The salary was decent, the mission felt meaningful, and my boss, Sarah, seemed like the sort of person who genuinely cared about making a difference. She'd been running the charity for 8 years, had pictures with local MPs on her wall, and spoke passionately about helping vulnerable families in our community. What I didn't know was that she'd been helping herself to those families' money for years. It started with small discrepancies I noticed while reconciling the accounts. Nothing major, just £200 here, £150 there that didn't quite add up between our donation records and bank statements. I figured it was just sloppy bookkeeping from whoever had my job before me. Sarah had mentioned the previous coordinator left suddenly, and I assumed they'd made some errors I'd eventually sort out. But the more I dug, the more patterns emerged. Regular monthly transfers of £800 to something called administrative consulting services that weren't in any budget I could find. Invoices for emergency family support that had no accompanying documentation. Cash donations that seemed to mysteriously shrink between being recorded and banked. I started keeping a spreadsheet of every questionable transaction, cross-referencing them with our official charity reports. The picture that emerged made me feel physically sick. Over the past 2 years alone, nearly £47,000 had been siphoned off through various fake expenses and inflated costs. The administrative consulting services payments, they were going to a company registered to Sarah's husband. The emergency family support? Half of it was genuine, but the other half was going to families that didn't exist. Addresses I checked that turned out to be empty lots or businesses. The worst part was seeing how it affected our actual work. Families we'd promised help were getting turned away because funding was tight. The Henderson family who'd lost their home in a fire were told we could only provide £300 instead of the £1,200 they desperately needed. Meanwhile, Sarah had just returned from what she called a conference in Spain, paid for, according to the books, by our professional development fund. I knew I had to do something, but Sarah wasn't just my boss. She was well connected in the charity sector. One bad reference from her could destroy my career before it started. She sat on the board of 3 other local charities and was regularly quoted in the local paper as an expert on community support. Who would believe a finance coordinator with 6 months' experience over someone with her reputation? That's when I remembered something my dad always told me. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's making sure justice actually happens. I started planning something that would not only expose Sarah's theft, but ensure she could never do this to another charity again. I just needed to be very, very careful about how I went about it. I spent the next 3 weeks building an airtight case. Every evening after Sarah left, I stayed behind to photograph documents, print duplicate records, and trace money trails. I discovered the theft went back much further than 2 years, more like 5, with increasingly bold amounts as Sarah got more confident. The total was staggering, over £180,000 stolen from families who desperately needed help. But I needed more than just financial records. I needed to catch her in the act. So I set a trap. I created a fake donation record for £5,000, supposedly from a wealthy benefactor who wanted to remain anonymous. I made sure Sarah saw the paperwork, watched her eyes light up at the amount, and waited. Sure enough, within a week, she'd created a corresponding expense for emergency accommodation costs for £4,200, leaving just enough to look legitimate while pocketing the majority. The beauty was that this donation never existed, so there was no money to steal. When Sarah processed the fake expense, she was essentially creating evidence of attempted fraud in real time. I documented everything, her creating the fake invoice, backdating supporting documents, even recorded her on my phone explaining to me how these emergency expenses worked. But I didn't just want Sarah caught. I wanted to ensure the stolen money was recovered and that this could never happen again. So I didn't go straight to the police. Instead, I compiled everything into a comprehensive report and sent copies simultaneously to 5 different places: the Charity Commission, the local police fraud unit, the trustees of our board, the local newspaper's investigative journalist, and the regional development agency who provided our core funding. I timed it perfectly. Sarah was at another conference, this one supposedly in Edinburgh, when the emails landed on a Tuesday morning. By Wednesday, the Charity Commission had frozen our accounts pending investigation. By Thursday, the police had obtained warrants for Sarah's financial records. By Friday, the local paper was running a front-page story. Local charity boss accused of stealing £180,000 from vulnerable families. Sarah tried calling me from Edinburgh, panicking, asking what was happening. I played innocent. Told her I'd arrived at work to find officials waiting, that they were asking for financial records, that I was just as shocked as she was. She cut her conference short and raced back, but it was too late. The investigation moved quickly once it started. Within 2 weeks, Sarah was arrested and charged with fraud, theft, and money laundering. The fake donation trap I'd set provided clear evidence of intent, while my documented evidence trail showed the systematic nature of her crimes. Her husband was also arrested as an accomplice for the consulting payments. The court case was thorough. Sarah pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence, but she still got 18 months in prison and was ordered to pay back every penny, including the proceeds from selling her house. The judge commended the investigation's thoroughness and noted that without detailed financial evidence, they might never have secured a conviction. But the best part wasn't Sarah's downfall. It was what happened next. The publicity around the case actually led to increased donations from people who wanted to support our genuine work. A local businessman donated £50,000 specifically because he was impressed by how we'd handled the crisis. The Regional Development Agency increased our funding as recognition of our improved financial controls. I was promoted to finance director and helped recruit a new CEO, someone with impeccable references and a genuine passion for our mission. We implemented new oversight procedures that made it impossible for anyone to repeat Sarah's crimes. The Henderson family, who'd been turned away before, finally got the full support they needed. 6 months later, I received a letter from one of the families we'd helped with the recovered money. They wanted to thank the charity for helping them stay in their home when they couldn't afford rent. They had no idea their support came from exposing a thief, and that was perfect. It meant we were doing our job properly again. Sarah's career in the charity sector is over. She's banned from being a trustee of any charity, and her name brings up news articles about fraud whenever potential employers search for her. Sometimes the best revenge isn't personal, it's professional accountability. The experience taught me that speaking up isn't just about doing what's right. It's about protecting the people who can't protect themselves. Those vulnerable families deserved better than someone who saw their desperation as a business opportunity. And if you want more complete stories with no part twos that never come, follow the page. New story every day.